I say that engagement is the one thing that changes everything. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but let's go back to the cockpit example. When I was in that jet, you're in it. Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, there is nothing else happening. You are going 500 knots. There's a morning stand-up meeting. Do you understand what you're doing? Do you have what you need to do it? Do you have any roadblocks going on? We all think of accountability as a bad word. Like, oh, I'm going to hold you accountable. No. Are you getting the work done? Why are you behind? And things happen like that.
Hey there, welcome to the Mental Perk Podcast. I'm Carla Hutcherson, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Brandy Mock, entrepreneur, author, and community leader. And we're here to talk about real people, real issues, and real talk.
We are back for another episode of the Mental Perk. Today's guest is Brian Maddocks, a decorated U.S. Air Force fighter and spy plane pilot who spent over 20 years operating in environments where performance meant life or death. After transitioning to the aerospace and defense industry, Brian led cross-functional teams that delivered billions in revenue by transforming dysfunctional into high performance. Now he's the founder and CEO of Total Engagement Leadership, where he trains leaders using the team engagement operation system modeled after elite Air Force pilot training. Brian's mission: to turn managers into confident, accountable leaders and make engagement a real, measurable business advantage. His motto is lead boldly, engage relentlessly, win decisively. Welcome to our show, Brian.
Thank you.
So I have to start out with the first question for you. Mad Dog. What's the story behind that?
The origin of Mad Dog. So my last name is Maddocks. It's not much sexier than that.
Okay.
But
you could have come up with a better kind of sexy story,
well,
right?
But so there is a funny story. So back in the day, back in my younger flying career, I was an instructor pilot, and I was a lieutenant, junior captain, something like that. So 27, 28-ish years old, and a friend of mine, Hamill was his last name. He went by, his call sign was Hammer. And he's the old crusty chain smoking, back in the day, and his voice sounded like this. And I don't know, I just walked in one day and he goes, "Hey, Mad Dog!" And I'm like, I guess that's my call sign.
I love that, though. It's a good call sign.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's a really good
it's
call
a
sign.
lot of fun.
Did you have like a little dog on your plane?
No.
Oh, don't they put little
So
pictures?
he didn't have a mascot, basically. What was his mascot?
Well, I did. Eventually I had a friend. I had a guy that worked for me. He was actually a tattoo artist.
Okay.
And he made a little logo for me with a set of pilot wings like this, but he like a bulldog like leaning over it like that.
That's
so
what I was envisioning.
I've got my own little Mad Dog logo. Yeah.
So
cool.
Did you get the tat?
Sorry?
Did you get the tat?
No, I don't have that one.
He kind of cost. He was like, sorry.
I should have told you I do, and then you can ask me where it is.
Yeah.
But
You make it up.
make it up. Yeah.
Well, so how on cue was Top Gun? I really want to know.
The first one or the second one?
Any of them.
Either, both.
So, I mean, there's pluses and minuses, right? I mean, what I really dug, if you're asking like, okay, how realistic is it, right? Mm-hmm. So, what actually I really like, so my favorite one, let's get this out of the way. My favorite one was the first one.
Yeah.
Right? It's very nostalgic for me.
Yes.
I was in high school when it came out. I was applying for the Air Force Academy. So that was like, that was
the dream.
That's near and dear to my heart. It gives me goosebumps every time I watch it. But the second one actually fell apart for me, like when they both ejected over the woods and they met in the woods. Like, okay, this is just getting too stupid. But what's really cool if you watch it and you know what you're looking for, that whole like attack scene where they're coming in low over the ocean and they're in their foreship and you got Tomahawks launching and you've got Hawkeyes, like spy planes out there. That's like legit. That's what we call like combined arms. So there are a lot of different things happening at one time. So if you watch that, that's what we really do. It's not like one lone thing. It's a whole team coming together, very coordinated against a target.
Right.
So I've actually used a lot of that in what I do. That whole, the way we prosecuted targets in the military, not only on the air side of it, but the ground side of it. We're all coordinated. We're all talking to each other. There's people doing things at the same time. If you can't hit your primary target, you go to your secondary target. But you have to have context of what's going on in the whole situation, and that applies That's really one of the lessons. So thank you for asking. It's really one of the lessons that I bring to what I'm doing now, and one of the reasons I started my business. So
I'm just thinking when I'm hearing this, I'm thinking it's the fight or flight. Your adrenaline's pumping. You're just, I mean, and it may not be after you've done it for so long. But
no, it always does.
Okay, so when you went on that first mission, and I'm sitting here hearing you have to coordinate all this stuff going on, you're really having to trust your comrades to make sure that y'all are all on the same page.
Yeah.
What
Absolutely.
I'm thinking is, like, if there's a last minute situation that arises,
Yeah.
how much coordination time do you have?
Not a
or
lot.
is it something you're pre-planning?
Not a lot.
Are you pre-planning stuff prior to make sure if this happens, this is what we're going to do with this?
Yeah.
And there's like it's like playing football. This is the play we're going to play.
Exactly.
Kind of
or you
do?
audible, or you read, or you whatever. I mean, football's like a great analogy for all of that.
Okay.
And if you watch pro football, and this is a good analogy. I mean, they've got 3 plays set up in one play. The quarterback will call an audible, and even after the play is executing, the receiver has got to read the defense and either cut in or go long, go down, do a fly route down the field, and they got to be on the same page.
Right.
So you'll see like a throw that's completely missed. You go, oh, the quarterback screwed up. No, they just had a different read.
Okay.
The quarterback read it differently than the receiver did, and you'll see the quarterback like yell at the receiver because like they didn't read it the same way. But no, it's the same thing. So you've got primary targets, secondary targets, tertiary targets, but the big trick to all of this is everybody knows what's going, you know what's happening. You have context. You know what the ground targets are. You know what we haven't fought an air war in a long, long time, but you know what's going on the ground. You know what the mission is. And, I'm bringing that to, I'm total engagement leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about leadership in corporate, in a corporate environment, you guys nailed this. You guys touched on this in your recent podcast about getting back to work, right? And you talked about it from the perspective of the individual and kind of, the socialization part of it. The part that I look at in all of this is the leadership and management part with an emphasis on engagement and team engagement, right?
Yes.
I say that engagement is the one thing that changes everything. So I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but let's go back to the cockpit example. And the reason I'm using engagement as a thing, like when I was in that jet, and you touched on this, I mean, you're in it. Like mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, there is nothing else happening. You are going 500 knots. You're about this far from somebody else also going 500 knots. And things happen like that. I mean, in training, I've been in situations where you're going like this with another guy doing 500 knots. And it's just like,
That's
boom.
crazy.
I'm like,
And now it's fights on, and and now you're at 9 Gs just going, trying to push blood up in your head.
So
sorry.
I really have to just
no,
ask.
I'm like, it's stressing me out
I
hearing
know.
it.
I'm just like,
It's not stressful.
whoa.
It's like that's
adrenaline.
being
It's
engaged.
adrenaline.
That's
Yeah.
like that's
This
the
is what you worked hard
ultimate of
for.
being engaged. Yeah.
But I had a question because I really wonder, you have to be so mentally fit to do this, right? What do y'all do to train for the mental health of learning and training to do these really dangerous tasks?
You train. That I mean, it's all when we do this, and it's not just fighter pilots or SEALs or the elite. It's everybody. You are very task oriented, right? It's very mission oriented. This is what we're doing, and we're going to do it. And you don't think about yourself at that point. You're thinking about the mission and the team. So you kind of take yourself out of it.
So I could imagine that there's training and y'all do extensive training.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you don't know how someone's going to react until they're in the situation. How do you kind of weed those people out so that you're not in danger?
That's why the training's so intense.
Yeah.
It's
It's like going through buds. A lot of them get in there. They don't even make it to the first couple days.
Right.
It's you're figuring out who the weak ones are.
You're figuring out who can do what.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's so many parallels with military and corporate and work and that we're all familiar with. And it's a little bit, it's kind of nuanced. I mean, you figure out what people do, how they are, how they act. And one of the things that I've built into my programs are, like a what we call in the military, a fight tonight attitude. Like, we're not doing a bunch of assessments. We don't have time to bring a bunch of people in and out and hire and put, like, look, here's your team.
Let's figure out how to make it work.
You got it.
Yeah.
This is what you got.
Yeah.
And you roll with that.
And I can really see a benefit to what you're doing for leadership, because I think, leadership, they work up through management, but they have so many different kinds of people that everyone works differently, thinks differently, feels differently, right? And so I think that, just having one standard procedure or way to handle a problem doesn't necessarily work. In our program that you talked about that we did on our podcast, we have a module for that for leadership to kind of work on, really helping them adapt to that. But I feel like it's probably, what you're doing and just really focusing on leadership can make a big difference in a corporation.
Well, I think when I hear everything you say, especially with the training you've been in combat, is discipline. Everything comes down to discipline, right? And structure. And sometimes
that's the word.
Some people don't work very well together or at all unless they've got a structured plan set in place.
Right.
If you've got a team that doesn't know what they're doing because they're not communicating with each other, the company can't work very well.
And you just nailed the key to all of this. We talk about, I think, the biggest difference between the military and corporate, right? And it's actually on my logo, like that, and those two little triangles going like that are kind of the juxtaposition of the military. It's a different situation, right? I totally get it. And there's a lot of people that are going to be like watching, listening to this, like, oh, well, the military doesn't apply to corporate. They're two different things.
Yeah,
and they are,
Yeah.
but you got to apply the right lessons to it. You can't just smash them together. What's really missing from corporate, though, is the leadership, and I'll say management. I think the whole argument of are you a leader or you're a manager is a completely false dichotomy. You have to be successful. You have to do both.
Yeah.
Those two things are linked by strategy and a strategic thread, and that's the mission. And again, going back to the military, we all are able to execute in a military targeting environment. We're able to execute because we all understand what the mission is and have very carefully planned the mission. And planning is key because that's what doesn't happen in corporate a lot of times.
Yeah.
What happens in corporate a lot of times is, most of the time, I would argue, is that you've got a very talented, like, individual performer, right? Let's say engineering, because that's the world that I live in. I do aerospace engineering. So you got a very talented engineer, and they go, "Hey, you're a great engineer. You're really competent. We're going to make you a manager," right? And on a functional management level, that might work. I'm managing a bunch of engineers. It's fine in a matrix organization. But then you bring them into a project or a program environment where they've got to operate cross-functionally on a complex project. They don't know how to do that. That's a completely different skill. And it's not that they're bad people or not talented people. They've just never been taught to do that. They don't have the skill set to do that. And that's the problem.
Today's episode is sponsored by Hudson Financial Group. At Hudson Financial Group, their goal is to make sure your life is fully covered. Do you truly understand your current insurance coverages? Are you protected for the things you need and not paying for the things you don't? Come by and let them help maximize and understand your coverage. With access to multiple carriers, they'll find the best protection at your best price for you. Whether it's home, auto, farm, and ranch commercial coverages, bonds, life insurance, or financial planning, Hudson Financial Group is your one-stop shop for insurance and retirement needs. Stop by today.
Someone can be really knowledgeable, doesn't make them a great manager.
Well, and leader. I can see, because I owned my own company for 15 plus years.
Yeah.
And I was a boss, I wasn't a leader. And I really wish now you go back and you're able to reflect.
Yeah.
I wish I was more of that leader. Yeah. Because leaders lead and they want your team. And I always wanted my team to grow, but I bet your hardest thing is if someone came into me and said, Brandy, I want you to do A, B, and C. The boss of me would have been like, look, I know my job. I got mouths to feed. There was no trust with me.
Yeah.
It was do your job and be done with it, right? Yeah. That's not a very good leader.
No, it's not.
Okay, and I'm willing to admit it. So I bet your hardest structure was, or when you're doing this, is trying to tell the people at the top, hey, you need to focus on changing things so that your team's better.
What's coming into my mind as you say that is like, yeah, but it's not that simple.
Oh, it's not,
because it's this whole iterative thing, right? Because so there's a quote from, I think it's General Patton or one of the generals. It says, "Don't tell someone how to do something. Tell them what to do, and let them surprise you with their ingenuity."
Okay.
Right.
I love that.
I do too.
So the idea behind leadership/management is we're going to create a thread, the leader, and I believe in servant leadership, right? Mm-hmm. It's a leader should be a servant leader. Like the team does the job. Get this, hey, leaders out there, get this through your head. The team does the job. It's not your job to do the job. It's your job to help the team do the job.
Yeah.
And to me, there's kind of the 4 C's of leadership is what I call it.
Okay.
One is clarity, right? Being very clear about what I want you to do. Now, you're the professional. You go do it. You figure out how to do it, but we're going to agree on what it is that we're doing. Just like when I flew a combat mission, we were very clear on what it is that we're doing, but nobody's going to tell me when to push the pickle button and drop the bomb. I mean, that's my job. I know how to do that.
Right.
So there's an overlap there, right? Don't tell me how to do it. I know that. I'm competent, but yeah, I need to understand what it is you want me to do, boss.
Right.
The other is commitment. 2 is commitment. Okay. Commit resources. Like a lot of people, hey, I need you to go do something, go do it. Well, they don't have the authority or the time or the tools or the people or the whatever to do what it is that you're asking them to do. So as a servant leader, you have to make sure that your people that you're asking to do something have the commitment, have the resource commitment to do that, right? 3, clear obstacles, right? What do you need? What's in your way? You tell me you're getting this done. If you run into a roadblock because one of the upper management people tell you to do something that's not consistent with this thing. And this happens a lot in matrix organizations because an individual contributor, and again, I'll use engineers as an example, they're working on multiple projects at one time.
Right.
So how do I allocate my time? Nobody's giving me priorities. I got to figure that out for myself.
And you see that a lot with big companies, like engineering firms, architectural firms. I mean, and
that's what burns people out.
It is. It really is.
That lack of clarity is what burns people out, right? And then the 4th one is accountability, right? It starts with an A. I used to call it a C, whatever. It's just funny. Right?
There's some C's in there.
Yeah, whatever. There's some C's in there. When I have it in my stuff, I have a little A and a big C, and that's and we all think of accountability as a bad word. Like, oh, I'm going to hold you accountable. No, we're going to have a conversation. Yeah. We're going to talk, and you're going to hold me accountable as much as I'm going to, like, are you getting the work done? Well, no, I'm behind. Well, why are you behind? Oh, because I need this thing. Okay, well, that's my job to get you that thing.
Yes.
So we hold each other accountable. Yeah. That's I had a friend ask me, he's like, well, how often do you think we should be doing like reviews, like, annually, quarterly, monthly? I'm like, every day. Every day a leader or a manager, I believe in like an agile, if anybody's familiar with like agile methodologies and Scrum and things like that. I've actually built that into my system. I call it FLITE, but it's an iterative thing. You're going to be talking to your team. There's a morning stand-up meeting every day, and you're very short, but we're going to talk about these things. Do you understand what you're doing? Do you have what you need to do it? Do you have any roadblocks going on? And we're going to talk about that. And that iterative, that very high touch iterative environment creates that accountability, but not in a bad way.
There's never a question of what the expectation is for the day.
Bingo.
Well, we did that at Children's. Like, we had a team and we were dealing with, serious stuff, children's suicide, suicidal thoughts and behaviors. And so, every morning we did exactly that. We had a short little meeting where we just topped off the day, what we need to do, where are the patients at, that kind of thing. And it was so helpful because it really helped to guide you through the day and make sure that you knew exactly what you were responsible for.
I think you're motivated then too, because your team cares about each other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that gets back into that engagement thing, and that gets back into that mental health thing.
Right.
Like, one of the pillars in my program, it's, I have pilot as my leadership thing, go figure. But it's an O, and it's opportunity, right? And I use Maslow's hierarchy of needs as my kind of my formulative framework there, because look, we all go to work to get paid.
Right.
Right. And that's the bottom part of Maslow's hierarchy, even that survival part.
Yes.
Right. But if you're doing it right, and you're a servant leader that's focused or organizing around this idea of engagement, where you're building this team, everybody can both simultaneously perform at their best, but also be their best human, at the same time, because you're building a team. You're building that next level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that feeling valued, right? That being a part of, feeling respected and valued and part of a team. You may or may not get all the way to self-actualization at work, right? I mean, look, when I was growing up, and part of the reason I'm doing this is I grew up in a really blue collar town, right? Like, nobody's going to get self-actualization for going and working fast food or in a factory or something like that. You're going to get that somewhere else. And that's fine, but we can help our people feel valued, feel respected, feel like they're belonging part of a team, regardless of what our work environment is.
I mean, I can see what you're doing applies to everything in life. It's not just corporate world.
It really does.
Family life too.
Absolutely.
mean, there's structure to all that. There's encouragement to all that. So I see what you're saying. I mean, it sounds like a great thing you've got going here.
I hope so.
I hope so too. I think it's awesome.
I think about how, if you're taking kind of that military structure or things that you learned in Air Force, and you're bringing that into the corporate world, how hard is it to take that mentality and then also put that together with today's kind of mental health awareness and what people are trying to do with, life and work balance and all the different things and the different expectations of a new generation?
I mean, I don't think they're two separate things. I think we as a society, and this is a very Western thing, but I think we as a society really try to bend things, right? Is it this or is it that? It's all the same thing, right? I think we humans are natural problem solvers. This is what we do. And really this is, my opinion, but if you look at humans and human evolution, the way we became the dominant species on the planet is because we're able to work together. That's the key trait of Homo sapiens, and why actually we I'm going to say this and it's going to sound horrible, but how we killed off all the other human species on the planet. The unique characteristic of us is we're able to trust each other and work together without being part of the same tribe. I can just meet you, get on the phone with you. I might have no idea who you are or what you do, but we can start having a conversation.
Right. There's going to be something we connect on.
Right. Exactly. So what makes us human at our DNA level is solving problems together and collaborating and helping each other. And that's multi-generational. That's part of our evolutionary DNA. I mean, I get that there's different expectations. I've got a son that's 27, and we have these conversations all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that if you're organized around purpose or mission, call it what you will. My model, I use purpose as an organizing leadership principle, but it's not the touchy-feely kind of purpose, right? It's like, oh, what's my purpose in life? It's mission, objective, task, right? What is the organizational mission? What's the big thing we're trying to solve here? How does that roll down into a team level objective? Like, what are we trying to accomplish as a team? And then how does that roll down into an individual task, right? And we're organized around task. There's one of my favorite books is, and now I'm going to space on the name of it for a moment. Not Team of Teams, although I love that book too. Captain's Class. So, and forgive me, I forget the author's name off the top of my head, but Captain's Class is about the greatest sports teams in history. And it talks about, and there's a captain, and the captain's not usually who you think it is. It's not usually the best player. It's usually a servant leader, what he calls a water carrier.
Okay? Or the motivator, right? Or
that too, right? But they're kind of under the scene, below the seams. They're keeping everything together. They're the ones passing the ball so that the star can kick it into the goal. Right. But there's a one of the chapters in there talks about conflict. And he talks about 3 different kinds of conflict, right? Number 1 is interpersonal conflict. We just don't like each other. We just bang heads. That is always counterproductive, right? That's always 100%. Detrimental to the team. There's a second kind of conflict where we're talking about kind of things at a I want to say at a mission level, right? But it's very qualitative. It's like, hey, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, blah, blah, blah. We're just kind of, harping on each other. That can actually devolve into something personal pretty quickly and is neutrally productive. It might be productive, it might not. But the third kind is 40% more productive than the others. And that's when you're having a conflict about a task and exactly what it is that we're doing. So now you can take the task and pull it out as a separate thing that we're talking about together and trying to solve this problem together. And it's not about you and me and conflict and whatever. I think that's, it sounds a bit mechanical maybe, but I think that's the key to it. And that's the key to really management, is getting back to clarifying the work at the task level so that everybody's clear on the task and we can have conversations about the task and whether the task is the right task or not. So
yeah, no, I love everything that you're doing. And, we see a need for that, and just really helping corporations really kind of restructure to really be able to connect with their employees and be able to, keep that relationship growing so that there's not a lot of turnover and you're more productive and you're achieving those tasks. And I think that's super important what you're doing. Brian, you and I talked not too long ago, and you were telling me about, hey, I watched an episode of your podcast, and I had some thoughts on it. So I wanted to kind of take it back to that trait, toxic masculinity, and because you said you had some thoughts, and I'm really interested of hearing what these are.
Well, it's funny because I just listened to that podcast on the way in here, just going to remind myself, what that sounded like. And, I get into, without getting into the details of that. There's
different views.
That conversation. A couple thoughts on that, right? One, I think I think in Western society, particularly where we are right now in our history, we create a lot of false dichotomies, right? Look, conflict plays well on TV.
Yes.
I remember watching when like reality TV first came out, like Big Brother, and the first year Big Brother came out in 2020.
Oh yeah.
Right. And we've all, or 2000 rather, 2000. And it's just sort of gone on from there. Like, you don't get attention. It's an attention society, right?
Yes.
That's what makes everybody money.
It's a hot mess.
Fanfare.
Right. And so it's an economic incentive to create conflict. And
people love to watch the drama.
Yeah, exactly. It's the drama.
Love that.
A lot of it. She watches so much reality TV. I'm like, I
gotta keep up and know what's going on in pop culture.
I can actually see you on like a Real Housewives thing. I mean, like, totally, you'd be a perfect person.
I don't turn over tables, and I'm not a big yeller.
Oh, not yet.
But you could learn. I'm sure.
She could. If it's gonna pay her, she will.
Exactly.
I will say, as a mental health professional, like, I hear stories all day long, and when I go home, I just want to check out and watch, mindless television kind of thing. So
sometimes you do.
Yeah.
So I think the whole, obviously the conversation was totally relevant. I mean, there's this idea of, masculinity being, obnoxious.
Yeah.
Right. And for lack of a better word, and that's not right. I mean, your conversation really got into what I think the heart of the matter is. And again, I'll go back to servant leadership. Now, I think there's I think that can be either masculine or feminine energy, but let the masculine energy be. And I think people want that. I think a lot of men are kind of afraid of that, though, because of, the way societal norms have sort of
trends
become.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think is, but
I'm hearing you say this, not to interrupt you, but I just did interrupt you, so sorry.
No, I'm good. I've been talking too much anyway, so please do.
I'm just interested. So you talk, and it's like, how do you see, like, with what your training is? It's a manly thing. I love watching those short videos of the pilots getting ready to do their call signs before they fly off. I don't even know if that's what it's called, but I love watching it with the music.
Yeah.
I just get all fired up and pumped up because I love my country.
Yeah.
I love my country, and I love you boys for serving us.
Thank you.
And so how hard is it to see the shift in things? Because when I think of masculinity, I think of these boys. I think of military.
100%.
I think of
Air Force.
I think of the hunters. I think of just, the tough guys. You guys are the tough guys that serve our country.
Yeah.
How hard or how different do you think things have shifted from masculinity in your days of growing up to what you're seeing now?
It has.
Have we defined it differently?
That's a really
What
tough.
is a man, Brian?
I got to put Brian on the
No,
Brian,
so
define a man.
Actually, I have an answer to that. I mean, I think so. If you, for men, I'm not going to say masculine. I'm going to say masculine energy.
Okay.
Right. I would suggest, from my perspective, that masculine energy is the energy that, like, okay, we're just going to go get the job done.
Okay.
I'm not going to worry about how I feel. I'm not really going to worry about how anybody else feels. We'll deal with that later. That's got to be dealt with. I'm not going to suggest that doesn't need to be dealt with, but we got to go deal with shit, and we got to get stuff done. Mm-hmm. And that being first and foremost. I think the subtle difference, and I'm totally off the cuff here. I have not thought about this as a philosophical principle, but I think feminine energy has a lot to do with how people feel, kind of maybe first.
Yeah.
Whereas masculine energy has to do with get
Problem
the job
solving.
done,
Problem solving
first,
Yep.
and just getting it done.
And then we can talk about it after.
And then we have to figure.
We
have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But we'll deal with that after the job's done.
Right.
The job the job and the task come first. Again, though, I think that, and if we stop drawing these false dichotomies and these false differences between male and female energy, and let women be women and let men be men, then and play both roles. Men, okay, we got to go get shit done, but then you've got, and this is how tribal I think we were. The men go out and we're going to go kill a woolly mammoth or something, and people are going to get hurt and it's going to suck, and and
but you're going to eat.
But we're going to eat, and then when we get back, the women kind of like bandage everybody up and get everybody.
I also have to say, though, there's a lot of task-oriented women out there. And the difference in the men and the women in those roles are the women have the ability to be task-oriented and feel at the same time.
Yeah.
I think that's a difference because our brains are structured different.
This is something that I've had a few conversations on before. Like, when you get a very task-oriented woman, though, what is she? She's a bitch.
I know, which I hate that term.
Sucks.
That's me.
Yeah,
but that's terrible.
I hate that.
I mean, women.
But I'll get the job done.
But you get the job
I
done.
will get that job done,
Exactly.
and you'll be thanking me after.
Exactly.
And
But you put a man in the same, he's task-oriented, he's tough, he's whatever, but a woman does the same thing, and she's a bitch.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
But I'm okay with that.
But I think you can do that
I am
and
too.
still be
I'll defend
empathetic.
that.
I will too.
Yeah, I think you can still do that and be empathetic. I may be out of the box, but that's where I am.
But it's not. Again, it's not. Let's get out of the
not what's right or
Let's
wrong.
not get into the either or, right?
Yeah.
Let's get into the let's get into the ebb and flow.
Right. How does everybody work? Trying to understand it.
Right. Again, so back to agile methodologies. Again, I've got an agile methodology that I built that's it's really a combination of what we know in corporate as Scrum, and also like the military mission cycle and how we do things. But at the end of the cycle, you come back and you do like what we call in the military a debrief, what they call in Scrum a retrospective. But we get all this stuff done. We go heads down. We get it all done, and then at the end we review it, and we not only review the work, but we review kind of the team dynamic. Mm-hmm. So you create that psychological safety. at the end. Again, it's about servant leadership. It's about iteration, and not only on the work, but on the emotional state as well. And as a leader, it's about presenting yourself to your team openly and humbly, and in a servant leader mind. Okay, what did I do wrong? This, we either succeeded or we failed. Now we're all going to have a conversation, but that conversation isn't me standing up front. It's we're going to have a conversation. How could I have helped better? Yeah. Did I shut any of you down at any point? Yeah. Were we open together? Because we are a team. You're the ones doing the work. It's my job to get you what you need. And presenting yourself as a leader for critique, let's say. Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No, I'm pretty passionate. I'm taking everything in. I'm like, okay, I could have been applying this and this.
But I'm super passionate about that.
But to be a good leader, you also have to be a good servant.
Yeah, that's. I would suggest that's the number one. Like I say this to people. It's like I can teach you leadership with one word, and it's servant.
But you can't teach humility.
You gotta learn humility.
But there's a lot of leaders out there who
humble.
But to be a servant, you have to be humble. That's exactly. Right. And I think, like, to me, humility is the number one value that you can own as a human. Is that, hey, look, I could be. I think this. I believe this, but I could be wrong. So let's talk about that. And I think we lack that in today's society. We lack a lot of. I think that's probably one of the big reasons for.
I think we live in a world of an entitlement right now. I think we're living in a world of people feeling entitled to their own opinion. Doesn't matter what anybody else feels. And then the older people, which are us, and I'm okay with that. We kind of learned a different way.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of hard to see, and it does concern me a little seeing how things have changed dramatically the way they have, because I think we need a little bit more humility in this world.
But I think, back as growing up, people had their own opinions. They always did. But they respected each other and their opinions. Yeah. They didn't try to force their thoughts or their way of thinking on somebody else. And I think that's the difference. It's like, we're going to say free speech and do all these wonderful things. But when you're forcing it on somebody and not respecting their position, that's where I think we're going wrong.
Well, and that gets into the being the right to be offended.
Yeah.
Right, which is a lot of what's going on now, too. It's like,
why do you need to be offended just because I think differently? Exactly. Why do you need to be offended by that?
Why is what I'm saying have anything to do with your
stance?
And
your
I have a hard time because I don't have very much compassion for that. And
I have zero.
Maybe I need to work on it, but I don't think I do.
Yeah, no.
I'm like, just suck it up and move on.
Yeah.
People have hurt my feelings in life. Yeah. You move on.
Yeah.
Right.
But if we want to have a conversation about that, I mean, the best conversations you can have are conversations about with people that you disagree with or have a different opinion on. But we've gotten so personal.
Well, the therapist to me says, own the feeling. If you're feeling offended, own that.
Right.
But don't then, villainize the person who has a different opinion.
Bingo. And therein lies the difference, right?
That's a good point.
The vilification. Right.
Yeah. I agree. So, and I think what's happened is through whatever we're doing here with men and women, I think we're making men and women not work together, which we were designed to do. Exactly. We're making them so extreme on the spectrum that we're not realizing that we each have amazing traits that work really well together.
Yeah. And you can even I think there's a parallel to that's salient right now, and it's AI.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, we're trying to do everything. AI can do this. No. Like particularly as a pilot.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Right, particularly as a fighter pilot. I mean, you are one with the machine.
Yeah.
Like the machine does what the machine does, and you do what you do. One of the things that drives me nuts in the aerospace industry, and I've lived this too, is when the certifiers and the safety people and the engineers try to engineer the pilot out of the airplane, right? And that just takes way long, and it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of money. But put a pilot and now we're doing a lot with drones. So, you drone guys out there, this doesn't apply to you, but don't try to engineer the human out of the system. And I think we're trying to do that with AI, but the only reason I bring that up is because it's an example of what we're doing with men and women as well.
Yeah.
We're trying to engineer a man out of the woman, and we're trying to engineer the woman out of the man and make them all kind of one thing, and we're not.
Okay, that's a very good point.
I really like that
I
analogy.
just stopped hearing. I'm like, wow, that is perfectly said.
Yeah, I agree.
Because AI scares me. And, you think about it, and what you're talking about is that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to force AI into our world. And I'm like, we're taking a lot of humanity out of this, right?
Well, it's a tool.
It is a tool.
That's
but
the
it
thing.
it could be used as a very dangerous tool, just like humans can, right?
But it's also man-made, right? So,
but again,
unplug it.
Yeah.
So man-made this tool that's trying to eliminate man.
Well, again, like I said, I'm very much there are, you do a little bit of reading about this, and there's people who want this general AI, right? And they want AI to think like humans. And you know what? It will someday. I believe that it absolutely will. Is it 10 years, 20 years, 100 years? I don't know. Technology tends to go a lot faster than we think it's going to. Again, the airplane is a perfect example. First flight was forgive me, Orville Wilbur, 1903-ish. But then we're doing combat missions 10, 15 years later in World War I. And then we're doing mass bombing with it 40 years later in World War II. Even 30 years later in the 30s. So technology of aviation just went asymptotic.
It did.
And AI is going to do the same thing. But, again, it's like I talk to my large language models every day. It helps me think, and but I don't rely on it
to get you through a mission
specifically.
Well,
right?
I like how you said it's a tool, and that's what it is. And we have to remember that it can't replace. It's a tool.
Well, and AI has, and this is what humans have that AI may, or when we talk about generalized intelligence, right? What we humans have is context, right? We understand the world around us. We understand the situation that's, and AI only understands what you give it. Right. And again, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but someday it will think contextually, which will lead to generalized AI. But at least for now, we have human context. And at the end of the day, hopefully we humans continue to be the ones that are making the final decision. All recommendations from AI to the contrary, we've got the final decision, especially when you're talking about, again, back to military analogy, fatal decisions, so we live in interesting times.
We do.
It's interesting, the whole role of women and men in the workplace and doing what you're doing with your business and what we do in our business. We are about to start another training on modern dating because there's so many changes and challenges there.
That's
a whole new bag of worms.
How do you think some of these thoughts on masculinity and femininity fit into dating? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I haven't dated in a long time.
Me
so let me
neither.
just put that on the
scary part, right?
Let me just put that on the table. Good Lord! Now I got to think back to like when I was dating. It
was a different time. It really was. I mean, they date now on text. They date on apps. They date on Snapchat.
Yeah.
Before they ever take the step of actually talking to each other.
Yeah. I don't know.
A relationship starts and ends before they ever meet.
Yeah. Which is
crazy.
It could be good, could be bad. Could keep you from wasting your time.
Here's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to throw it out there and be controversial.
He's going to drop the mic.
I'm going to drop one. I think women today are in a bad spot.
Okay.
Tell me why.
I think women today are in a bad spot. But again, it gets back to the masculinity thing.
Okay.
Right? Because I don't know that men are taught to be leaders, servant leaders, and
gentlemen,
be a gentleman and be in a masculine role.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not out there socializing. And you guys had talked about COVID last time as well. We've all been in this cave for a while. We're just kind of starting to come out of it. And you got a whole generation of males, whether they're men or not. I think we'll draw a difference between males and men a little bit here, right? Which is, again, I'm going to drop a bomb here a little bit.
Drop a bomb. I want to know.
That might get me in trouble, but you know, I don't know that younger men know how to be men, you know, and just take care of shit. You guys brought it up last time. Like, what's the essential characteristic of a man? Get shit done.
Get it done.
Handle shit.
Leadership.
Just handle it.
Yeah.
Now I don't want to go to leadership, because leadership can be male or female.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
true.
That's a different thing. But being task oriented and just getting shit done and handling something and figuring it out. You know, regardless of how you feel about it.
Right.
You know, whether you're afraid or not afraid. I think, you know, when you think about your stereotypical, you know, movie character man, like it's not the muscles and it's not the this and it's the that. It's just, look, I'm going to put my fear aside and go get, I mean, courage is not lack of fear.
Yeah.
Courage is acting
With
in the face
fear.
of fear.
Yes.
That's what courage is.
Yes.
In the face of the challenge, in the face of fear, you do it anyway.
Exactly.
That to me is when you think about what a man does. He does what needs to be done, regardless of how he feels about it.
Yeah.
And I think men are uniquely able to do that. Maybe that's what differentiates men from women, because there's always, no offense to any women, but there's I'll say in general, the 80-20 rule. You know, women will there's an emotional aspect to
women
most
are
things, if not
absolutely more
everything,
emotional, for
right?
sure.
Well,
Whereas I think what's different with men is like, okay, I can take my emotions and how I feel about this and go put it in a box for a minute, go get shit done, and then we'll take the emotion out of the box and like I'll go talk to a woman and go, oh, that sucked. I need to talk to you right now.
There's scientific evidence to support what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because of the way our brains are made, there are more neuroconnectors between the women's two sides of the brain than there are men, which makes men more task-oriented, and women can be task-oriented and feel at the same time. See, they're designed that way.
Yeah.
Well,
they're designed that way.
That's why there's men.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
God,
that's
right?
why there's men. Let's get back to where we are having real men women relationships.
Yes, exactly.
And you do what you do well, and I do what I do well. Like when I'm not feeling well, I want to talk to a woman. I'll talk to my wife, or you know, my back when my mom was alive. You know, I mean, I really identified with my mother when I was a kid because my dad was a very manly man, and you know, I'm a little kid, so I'm still figuring my way around the world. I was kind of afraid of my dad, but I always went to my mom, you know, and I think that's, you know,
well, there's comfort
for me
in that.
anyway.
There's comfort in that.
You know, I definitely, when I want to work something out, I definitely want to talk to a woman about it, not necessarily a guy.
I love that though. That's good because most guys will want to go to their bros and talk it out, especially with y'all in your field, the military, you know, the guys that, let me ask you a question though. We're going to go back to, you know, because I'm sure this applies to what you're doing now. How did you decompress from all of, let's say, missions that you were on that were pretty like, holy cow, I got out of this by the skin of my teeth?
For me, and I can only speak to my own experience. But I want to say this is fairly common. I mean, I don't know that I did like in a like, okay, I got to come down from this or whatever, you know. And this actually, I'm just going to contradict what I just said about women. I go drink a beer with the guys.
Okay.
You know, we actually have a ritual in the fighter world. Is like military aviation in general, right? You land, you debrief, you go drink beer, and then we're all yucking it up and slapping it. And that's kind of your decompression, right? But what I will say, though, is that, and I'll go back to that task-oriented mindset, I just expected it. I mean, you go in with that mindset. You go into a mission with a mindset that you could get killed.
And so you're ready for it before it even happens.
You're ready for it before you have the mindset to where you're ready for it's part of the game. It's part of the world, you know, and you just, if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, it's like,
so
cool.
Question on that, because I'm thinking about you saying it, you've dealt with it, but how did you walk your wife through dealing with it in case something happened? Was she kind of on that prepared side of things too?
So my current wife is different from the wife I had in my military career. So let's kind of like,
and that happens a lot.
Differentiate that a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's a whole different path with the ex-wife that I don't even know that I want to go down. But I think, I think I think in general, the military, at least there was back in the day. I don't know how it is now. I've been out of that. I retired in 2011. So, almost 15 years now, but there was a very strong, wives community. The wives kind of socialize, they take care of them. They have a very tight knit community, and they're just as aware of it as we are.
Yeah.
I think it's hard. I think it's harder on the wives and harder on the family than it is for us.
It is, yeah.
Because we're doing it. We have control of what we do.
Yeah.
And the people that are behind and just
control
waiting for us to come home.
The phone calls,
and she's taking control of everything else,
Yeah.
right?
And then
That's
taking
really
care of
hard,
the household and the kids and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's far more difficult for wives and families of not only military, but first responders, things like that, anybody that's in a dangerous situation. And I think you just go about your day. And like I said, I can't really speak to that. I'm not on that side, but I can.
We offer trainings for military and first responders based on a lot of those conflicts that happen between, managing those really big tasks that you are doing, like the people that are doing them, and then those at home having to manage that part of it. So there's a lot to that, and we do some extensive training on
That's
that.
super complex, yeah.
It's so complex.
I'm going to open another mic drop moment here.
Okay.
So we talk about the differences between men and women, but we also know there's some, and y'all are task oriented, all these different things, but there's some amazing women fighter pilots out there.
Oh, yeah.
So what are the differences you see there when
None.
you don't see any, like
Love
in
it.
that role, they fall
They're
right
very
into that.
task-oriented.
They roll into it. I mean, they're phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, I came in at the, as that transition was happening. I didn't fly with a lot of women. Just wasn't the timing. But man, I mean, one of the best fighter pilots in my F-15 squadron was a woman. And in training, I beat her, so that was kind of cool. Once.
She's like, never again.
Once, and it didn't happen again.
I love it.
I apologize, I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but she
knows who she is.
And the thing is, I mean, they've got to go through a much tougher gauntlet, right? I mean, because they've got to be like that much better. And they are. So I just watched. So on that topic, right? I just watched the Netflix series Thunderbirds. So if you haven't watched that, it's amazing. It really is. It actually gave me goosebumps. I was having a conversation. Let me go on a tangent for a minute. One of the things, and we'll get back to the women pilots in a minute. But one of the things I've dealt with, just starting my own business, is imposter syndrome. Believe it or not, right? I mean, I've always been in a part of a big organization, particularly in the military. It's like, even at the elite level, you're still a kind of a cog in a wheel, right? And you are part of a team. You're not special. You're a part of, regardless of who you are, or whatever. And a lot of us feel that way. So this came up. I was talking with a friend of mine who's also a consultant and also a pilot. And I'm like, hey man, have you watched? And he was like, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and whatever. And kind of, being a solopreneur kind of gets to you a little bit, right? Sometimes. And I'm like, dude, did you watch the Thunderbirds? He's like, oh, not yet. It's on my list. I'm like, you got to watch that. Because it really makes you realize how special you really are. I mean, like for me, any fighter pilot was that far away from being a Thunderbird. I mean, we did all the same stuff for the most part, right? And you watch that, and you watch just how amazing these people are and the things that they went through. I'm like, I actually did that. Yeah. So it kind of like, it helps you get over the imposter syndrome a little bit and, trying to apply this a little bit more generally, right? I mean, everybody's got a thing that they're the best at, so get over the imposter syndrome and just be what you're best at. But going back to your question a little bit there on that show, there was a guy that was having a problem. He just couldn't get this one maneuver down. Well, the instructor pilot of the Thunderbirds was a female pilot.
Yeah.
And she got, it was what we're talking, she got him through it. She got him through the visualization. She was sitting in his room with him and, hey, talking him through it. And so, yeah, they're shit hot. I mean,
They are.
Can't say enough about it.
I know. I love seeing that too. The women get in there. It's just like, it just makes you feel just empowered to me.
Yeah. No, and they bring, and just like we're talking about, but they bring a little bit different vibe to the whole thing as well. So we're built to be together.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, it's been amazing having you on the show. Sometimes we like to end with a little this or that. Did you come up with one?
I got to pull it up.
Okay, we're going to give a little.
I don't know if we
this or that.
decided.
A little
Hold
this
on.
or that.
There's a little this or that here.
All right. Would you rather pull 9 Gs with Taco Bell in your system or do survival training with your ex as a bunkmate?
We already know the answer.
9 G's Taco Bell. Well, no, I would rather do anything than survival training again. I mean, literally anything.
About your ex-wife with your ex-wife.
Well, and that's a whole nother level.
Yeah, that's what we were trying to. That's what makes it even funnier.
Yeah, no, but I would like just even taking the ex-wife out of the equation.
Yeah, which we'll do. Well, that'll be our.
You want to hear a
way
funny
of
story?
handling
I can
it.
give you a funny story though. If you
Yeah,
want.
we want
Okay.
funny.
Okay. So, I flew the U-2 spy plane. Okay. And you fly the U-2 spy plane in a spacesuit.
Okay, when you say U2, explain. I don't know what that is. What
Okay.
the U2's.
It's a giant black glider that flies at 70,000 feet.
Okay.
Okay, so think of being in an airliner.
Okay.
Right? In an airliner, you're about 35,000 feet. You know, you get to think, how's your captain today? Well, we have a cruising altitude of 36,000 feet, blah, 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 right? So
This is way up
so
there.
think double that
A little
high.
scary, yep.
No, it's not scary at all. I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
of course
again,
not.
it's you.
For him, it's not.
Well, no, but you go into it. We're going to get in a little bit serious again, but you go into the
Knowing,
situation
yeah.
with that mindset.
Yeah.
So you're in a spacesuit.
Okay. Why a spacesuit? Because of the altitude and pressure?
The altitude.
Okay.
So a little science lesson. There's a whole relationship between pressure and temperature, right?
Okay.
High school physics.
Okay.
And the boiling point of water, right? So water boils like at sea level. Water boils at 236 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. The higher you go in altitude, the lower the pressure on the water is. So the boiling point is lower. Like if you go to Colorado and you have a cup of coffee, you're like, oh, this coffee's cold. No, it's not. It's just the boiling point of water is a lower temperature.
I noticed that. It does get colder.
Yeah.
This is true.
The boiling point of water at about 63,000 feet is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, wow.
So if you are above that and you lose cabin pressure, you will boil to death.
Oh, my God. That just alone makes me go, I'm not going that high. What if I got a hole in the suit?
So
Like,
what happens?
seriously?
So the cabin's pressurized. Though.
Right.
The cabin is the cockpit is pressurized at 29,000 feet.
Okay.
All the way up there. But if you were to lose cabin pressure, that's what the spacesuit is for. So if you lost cabin pressure, the spacesuit inflates and it keeps you alive while you get the airplane down to lower altitude, so you don't boil to death.
That is crazy. That is insane.
So that's that. But in the U-2 world, so you are able to pee in the spacesuit. There's a way to do that.
They got a catheter connected to you, or?
I'll tell you that in a minute. Let's get through this. So
I'm wondering how that works.
so the long story, and I'm making a long story long, a short story long. But in our weapons department, which is a classified room,
Okay.
we had the Strato Shitters board.
The Strato Shitters board.
Strato Shitters board, right? So that was everybody who had mistakenly eaten Taco Bell before they went up on a 10-hour mission in a spacesuit and shit themselves in the spacesuit has their name on the Strato Shitters board.
I'm just in awe.
How many times did you make that board?
He's
Never?
not going to, he's
So how long are your
No,
missions?
to this day, I'm still like regular. I like got
So
it.
were the guys,
I still got it nailed down.
Were they proud or like?
Oh no, you don't want to do.
defeated?
You
It's
don't
the
want
wall
to
of
be on that
shame.
board.
It is the wall of
You
shame.
do not. That is the wall of shame. Exactly. You do not want
Okay,
to be
so
on
tell
that
me
board.
how this works. How does the? I mean,
The peeing thing.
peeing and shitting. How does that work?
Well, you don't shit. That's you get yourself
is
on
just
you get yourself on a really regular schedule. To this day, I am still on that very regular schedule. Like once a day, cup of coffee in the morning,
Do your
boom,
deal and you're done.
and done.
Okay.
Done until tomorrow.
Okay. Done until
The
tomorrow.
whole
Done till
conversation.
But no, this is so funny. But so how's the voiding go? How do you void? Use the restroom.
Yeah. Pee.
How do you pee?
Yeah. Okay. You really want to hear this?
Yeah.
Okay. You got time for this?
My daughter's a urology student,
All
so
right,
she's
great.
gonna love this
All right.
one.
So I'll tell you, you got to have the whole story to get it.
Okay.
To get the thing. So when you go in, so there's a whole big area where you don your spacesuit.
Okay.
And you have people, our life support people, actually put the spacesuit on you.
Okay.
Okay. It's not something you put on in the locker room.
Right.
So here's the whole flow. I'm going to fly today. You're going to go, you got to get the spacesuit on. You go into the locker room, you take your flight suit off, you take everything off, and you've got technically 5 pieces of clothing that you put on. A pair of like kind of white skibbies.
Okay.
Right? Long johns.
Okay.
Long john top and socks.
Is this like compression stuff too?
I mean, it's really tight. It's not compression, but it's skin tight,
okay.
right?
Okay. So you're stuck. Okay.
So the skibbies in the long john bottoms have a hole in them.
Okay.
Right here.
Okay.
And what you have is a rubber thing that looks like a hollowed out dildo.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, this is hilarious.
I don't know. You might have to cut this out. I don't know.
We're not cutting this out.
So you got this thing that looks like a hollowed out dildo.
Okay.
Okay. You put it on, and it's got a little. In the end of it, it has a valve.
Okay.
Okay. It's got a little snap valve. So you put that on first. You put the skibbies on with the hole in it. You put the long johns on with the hole in it. You put the socks on. You put the top on, and that's how you are, skin tight. And then you walk out into the room where there's a couple dozen people. There might be a kindergarten class in there that day. There might be a visiting senator. You have no idea who the hell is out there. But you get used to it. It's like, I guess it's probably like being a porn star. You just walk out on the set like, hey, everybody, here I am. And what you do is, what happens is they've got the spacesuit and it's like inside out on the floor. Okay. And you go up there, and the life support people are male, female, whatever. I mean, it's
their job. They're not thinking about anything else. Yeah.
Again, it becomes normal.
Yeah.
It becomes very normalized, right? So you walk out there in your skin tight long johns, your schlong hanging out, and just go up there, and you put your feet in the suit.
Okay.
And then they start pulling it up on top of you.
Okay.
So right about here, like where this pocket is, there's a similar pocket in the spacesuit.
Okay.
Right, and it's got a little tube in it, and it's got on the inside, it's got a valve.
Okay.
Right, so when they get spacesuit up to about waist level, you reach in there and you snap the valve on the dildo into the valve in the spacesuit. And then they finish pulling it up around you, put your hands in it, you get your head in the thing, they zip you up, they put the helmet on, snap that closed, and now you're on 100% oxygen. You take a nap for a half an hour before you fly because you got to be breathing. You got to denitrogenize your system. It's like scuba diving. So you got to get all the nitrogen out of your system before you go up. But that's it. And then what happens, you get in the jet and you get strapped in and everything. And you take that tube. Well, no, you leave it in there, but there's a hole. So your control yoke, like in an airliner, is right here.
Yeah.
And it's got a little hole in it right there.
Okay.
So when you got to go to the bathroom, what you do is you open up the zipper in that pocket. You take the little tube out. You put it in that tube. You open the valve.
And it drains it.
And the trick is you got to pressurize the suit a little bit so it goes that direction, or else it'll has the opportunity to come kind of you don't know where it's going to go. So you pump the suit up a little bit, get a little pressure in the suit, so it all goes downhill. And then when you're done, you just close the valve, put the hose up, good to go, chill out.
I had no idea.
That's how you do it.
This is a lot.
For some guys, I wonder, is that a game changer for them? Like, I'm not putting that thing on.
Oh my gosh, that is hysterical.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we have female U2 pilots as well, so they have their whole system too. But
wow,
that is so awesome. You've been a great guest.
Yeah, you have.
We've loved having you. We've learned so much.
Oh, we have things we wanted to know, things maybe not. No, I'm kidding. Actually, it was really Very interesting.
Maybe a Trivial Pursuit kind of thing. We could use some of that stuff for.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Or
You
just
know,
have
now you
him
know
back
what
on.
altitude blood boil's at.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, Brian, thanks so much.
Yes.
We hope people check you out. We're going to put all of your handles in there so people can check out your leadership programs and your, all the things, amazing things that
When's
you're
your
doing.
book going to come out?
Probably next year.
Okay, because I'm saying if you're not thinking about it, you need to write
No,
about it.
it's actually like on my list of things to do. I actually have a publisher. It's just been, gosh, and you guys know this. When you start you start to come, like when I started this whole thing, I'm like, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
And oh my God, but
you're just
getting
trying to get the
everything
day-to-day task.
together
To do
to have something to
Yeah.
to offer is.
Well, I think you've got so much, and I'm going to be one of the first ones to buy it once you publish it, because you've got so much good stuff to tell people and to guide them. I mean, if I'd have had you as my...
well, you know, what you guys are doing with the mental health side of it, like I'm doing the engagement side of it, the teamwork that we talked about, which I think in and of itself takes care of a lot of the angst and anxiety of the workplace. But, you know, what you guys are doing is kind of the flip side, and again, not opposite, but very complementary, I think. Super complimentary of what I'm doing. So I'm kind of on the operations side. You guys are kind of on the mental health side of it.
Co-mingling this maybe at some point and seeing what happens.
I'd love to do that. That'd be awesome. You guys are just fun. So
Thank you.
If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please reach out to talk to someone you trust. Get connected to a mental health professional who can help you find ways to cope and ultimately feel better. If you are having suicidal or self-harm thoughts or thoughts of hurting another person, please go to the nearest ER, call 911, or contact the National Suicide Hotline at 988. Thank you for tuning in to Mental Perk. We hope our talk today highlighted real people working through real issues based on mental health. Our goal at Mental Perk is to make sure every one of you knows you're worthy. We're in this together.